The other concept I wanted to mention is the idea of a triple bottom line business.
Huh.
How many times have you heard Dad mention the bottom line? Like he is a bottom line thinker.
Oh, yeah.
He'll take in a tremendous amount of information. He just, his brain fires through scenarios and he drops it all down to the bottom line. And he can tell really fast how it will affect the bottom line. And he often makes business decisions based on the effect of the bottom line.
Right.
Will this be profitable or not?
Right.
A triple bottom line business or a triple bottom line entrepreneur is thinking about three separate, related, and aligned bottom lines. There's the idea of the economic bottom line or economic capital. Then there's social capital or the social bottom line. And then there's spiritual capital and the spiritual bottom line. So here's how this plays out. If I have economic capital, I have the ability to invest that capital for the good of the company and the people in it, financially speaking. We've seen mom and dad invest their dollars into causes that they care about.
Right.
In a big way. Like mom and dad are some of the most philanthropic, generous people I've ever known.
I know.
Yeah, it's amazing. But when you get to social capital, this is something that didn't land for me automatically. Social capital is the network that we have, the goodwill that we have with people, and intentionally, on purpose, using that social capital to provide opportunity for others. I don't generally think this way. I've got buddies from high school and college that I've had relationships with for years and years and years. I've got Marine Corps friends. The relational bond there is deep. The CCIM network. And I've got, I know some of the best brokers in any market in the United States and some in Canada, augmented by my time at the Massimo Group. I've coached some of the best brokers in some of the biggest markets in the United States. Just growing up in this town and going to a large church and those relationships, all those relationships, that gives me the opportunity to use that social capital for the good of others, to provide opportunities to the good of others. And I don't think about that very often. And then spiritual capital, pretty obviously, really just investing in others for the good of the kingdom or for their eternal benefit. Whatever. I meet with these guys on Wednesday mornings. We met this morning, and I'm taking them through the Old Testament in chronological order.
Oh, wow.
The Old Testament is not written in order, not even close. And if you don't understand the timeline, it's almost impossible to understand the context of what's being written or what's being communicated. And if you don't understand the context, it's almost impossible to interpret anything correctly.
Yeah.
So if you read the Old Testament from cover to cover, you're jumping around a timeline. It's almost impossible to understand. And so if you can unlock that for someone, and look, you remember Bob Warren, he taught me the timeline when I was probably 18.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for the last almost 30 years, as I've been reading in the Old Testament, I've been able to put things in the right place, and it's helped me understand context and what they're actually communicating. Somebody has spiritually invested in me. In this case, it was Bob Warren. He unlocked the Old Testament for me by teaching me the timeline. And so now I'm trying to invest into these guys I meet with on Wednesday morning. So that's just an example of investing spiritual capital. But how does that actually play out day to day? And so
the other thing I wanted to say, but I didn't want to interrupt, I did so good biting my tongue, was when I saw, this is, I think, early 20s or mid 20s. I was in Chicago. There's like this big movement of, there's a lot of talk about the top 1%.
Like the economic chasm between the rich getting richer and the
Bernie
gap
Sanders was really about to have his heyday and run. And I was all, I was just jumping on the bandwagon like, yeah, no. And thinking about mom and dad, but like dad specifically, I was like, what would be his problem with paying taxes if that's going to help people who are having a hard time, right? Just that thought. And it all clicked with me when I forget what prompted this, but he showed me the amount of money that he gives every year. I was flabbergasted at the amount, percentage-wise, right? Not just the dollar amount. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, he doesn't want the government to decide where that money is going. He wants to decide where that money is going as a steward of that money, right? And I was like, Oh. And what's nice is that, with being charitable, you can write that off on your taxes. So in a sense, you are taking control of that money that you would otherwise be paying to the government, who would put it where they want to go, whether you agree with it or what they do with it or not, right?
That's exactly right. And just to be clear, Dad pays every dollar of taxes that he has to pay.
Yes.
But he's as strategic as possible in being able to keep as much of that because he wants to give to the things he believes he's being called to give to.
Right.
As opposed to, as you said, giving it to the government.
I wouldn't even say keep the most of it. It'd be like giving it to where being the one who chooses where it goes.
Exactly.
The only thing about that is it seems like mom and dad are an anomaly. And I don't know how many people at that level are actually doing that.
They're not an anomaly. In fact, the majority of philanthropy comes from entrepreneurs and business owners in that top 1%.
Okay, yeah.
It's the majority of that kind of giving and generosity comes from the mom and dads of the world.
Yeah.
Like they're totally not an anomaly. All right, so you want some how's this actually play out stuff?
Yeah, what are you going to teach me about this?
All right, if you like that clip, you can watch another one right here. And if you want to watch the full episode, you can watch it right there.
Did you get that?